If you have workflows whereby you have a series of files that all have the same format, and you want to collate all of the data in all the files into a single table, then connecting to a folder may be the answer. This convenient feature of Power BI allows you to connect to a folder and have all the contents automatically combined into a single table. The files being combined can even be placed inside subfolders. However, in order for this feature to work correctly, all of the files must have exactly the same column headings, although not necessarily in the same order, and they must be of the same file type. To provide greater flexibility when using this feature, you're able to specify an example file, and only columns in the example file will end up in the output file. Let's have a look at an example of how this feature works. In the exercises folder, in 05 connecting to a folder of data, we have a folder called expenses, and inside this we have a series of individual expense claims made by separate staff members. And there are two formats. If we open the first file, here we've got a 7-column format, so name, branch, date, amount, category, and then we've got some project information, the project ID and the task ID. In the second format, we only have the first 5 columns, name, branch, date, amount, and category. And let's say that this is the format that we want to use. For our analysis, let's say we don't need these 2 columns. So when we come to specify our example file, we'll simply use one of these files. So let's go back into the main folder 05 and let's open up the PBIX file so that we can connect to that folder. To connect to a folder, we click on Get Data and More. And this dialog shows you all of the different data sources that Power BI can connect to. And you'll notice that we have a search bar, which can be quite useful for something you haven't used before. Folder, as you can see, is easy to find in the list, but if it weren't, we could just type folder, and up it pops. And it's also in the file category. So we double click on folder, and we can either browse and navigate to the folder, or we can simply copy the path to the folder in File Explorer. The preview that appears in the dialog consists of metadata. It's a list of the files found within that folder. In some workflows, this information itself may be useful, but of course for us, we're interested in the contents of the files rather than the files themselves. So we click on Combine and Transform Data. And it's in the Combine Files dialog that we have the opportunity to specify a sample file. By default, the sample file is always the first file. So in our case, we'll choose the second file, since it has the correct format. The transformation that will be applied to each of the files is based on the file that you specify here. So since we've specified a CSV file, Power BI will treat all the files as CSVs. And that's it. All we need to do is to click OK, and Power Query will do the rest for us. So we can see that Power Query has created a number of helper queries which it's put into a separate group or folder, and the output query is simply named after the folder that we connected to, which was called expenses. And if we look at the columns, we can see that only the 5 columns in the sample file that we specified have been included in the output. We have an extra column here which tells us the name of the file that particular row came from, and we don't really need this, so we can simply right-click and choose Remove. So that's the basic process of connecting to a folder. But for the moment, let's just close the file without saving our changes. So we'll switch back to Power BI Desktop, close the file, and click on Don't Save. And in the next video, we'll look at using a custom sample file.